Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Tell me what is electrochemistry, somebody. Yeah.
Chemical reaction using cathode and anode as for the purposes of oxidation and reduction.
So only chemical reactions will happen?
Not necessary.
Then what else will happen? Okay.
Flow of electrons in a chemical reaction.
So only flow of electrons will happen? So what will happen? So a complete definition. It's here. So you can have, you pass some electrons and have some chemical reaction, or with a chemical reaction you can produce some electrons. So basically, it is like using an electric current, we will make some spontaneous, from a spontaneous chemical reaction we will generate some electric current, or you produce some non-spontaneous, you make a non-spontaneous chemical reaction happen using some electrons. These two are the major, what we call common as electrochemistry. So in an electrochemical reaction you have both ions and electron flow, right? So because of the chemical reaction you have some ion flow inside the electrochemical cell and some electron flows through the electrical circuit. So in an electrochemical system you can have an anode, cathode and an electrolyte. Somebody can tell what is an anode? Sorry?
Positive, no? Positively charged terminal.
Any answer? One. You are sure that it will be negatively charged?
Anode is where oxidation happens.
Yeah, that is true. It cannot be tell like as a negative electrode or a positive electrode. It is an electrode where an oxidation reaction will happen. Okay. And then cathode is an electrode where you have a reduction reaction happen. So for example, you can see here in a galvanic cell, this is an zinc copper galvanic cell. So here what happen is that a zinc electrode is dipped in a zinc sulfate solution and a copper in a copper sulfate solution, which is connected using a salt bridge. Salt bridge is for the connection, ion movement, and when it is connected, the zinc will get oxidized and this will be a negative electrode, and then copper here will be at the copper Cu2 plus in the copper sulfate solution get reduced and forms the copper. So it will be a positive electrode here. It is a galvanic cell. But in an electrolytic cell, so this is an example where carbon dioxide reduction will be happening. This is one of the now thought about process, or it's a one way of converting decarbonization. People are trying to use carbon dioxide reduction using an electrochemical system. So you can see that in this particular system, the carbon dioxide is getting reduced and here it is a negative electrode. So it is an electrolytic. So the reduction happening at a negative electrode, but again it is a cathode here. So basically in an electrochemical cell or an electrochemical system, anode is called an electrode where oxidation happens and cathode is an electrode where reduction happens. So in an electrochemical system, you can have different types of devices, like you can use an energy conversion, otherwise energy storage devices are there, and you can have sensors, you can have we can study about corrosion, and you can have something like fuel cell. It's like again and this one, energy storage devices, electrolyzers, etc. So with this, we are moving on to this is the basics of an electrochemical system. So in an electrochemical system, we can have an anode, cathode and an electrolyte through which ion movement will happen, and then through an wire we can have an electron flow. Okay. Oops, sorry. So we'll go have some history of electrochemistry, how it started. So actually it started with this Galvani. Actually he was doing some dissection experiment using an frog, and it was hanged through an copper or some metallic wire. These frog legs were, it was actually hanged to some metallic hangers using some sort of a copper hanger, and and these wires were going inside the leg. Okay, and he used two metals. These are two different types of metals. Okay, he touched the frog leg with one of the this metal. What he observed is that it suddenly got shrinked, or it got reduced in size actually. So he was thinking like that it is because of a generation of electricity from the muscles of frogs, and he was according to him it was because some electrode fluid in the which is generated from the brain of the frog, which released to these muscles, and this is the reason for the electrical conductivity of the generation of the electrons in this case, and he called it as animal electricity. So later Volta, he was very interested with this experiment. He started doing some of his experiment. He found out that it is not because of this fluid inside the frog leg. It is because of the contact between the two metal. And he did many experiments and he found out this one. This is called as voltaic pile. Actually it have an zinc copper pair, and there is an layer of electrolyte soaked solution, that is a sulfuric acid soaked with an soaked in a cloth which is kept in between. So it is like a pair. If you will see the expanded figure, he was actually thinking these two, this copper and zinc, right? This parallel metal in contact, that is the reason why the flow of electrons. And this between this whatever the wet thing will actually influence the conduction of the electrons. Actually if you will see, and now you guys knows what is an electrochemical cell, and so you guys will be thinking what? It is like a zinc, copper, and then a sheet of electrolyte inside. But according to him, he was telling like this is a zinc, copper, two different metals which is in contact, which generate the electrons, and this particular sheet of liquid electrolyte actually helping it to transfer to the next pair of metals. And according to him, it is because of the contact between the two metals that generating the current. And like these people, Nicholson and Carley actually use this voltaic pile to generate the water electrolysis. They put this one into two water beakers and then generated hydrogen and oxygen using this particular experiment. This is the this may be considered as the first electrolysis cell. Later, John Reiter, he is one of the very good scientists. He passed away in a very young age. At the age of 33, actually he passed away. He's done a lot of contribution by that time. By the age of 33, he had done a lot of experiment, and he was little over obsessed with his experiments, because he was using, he is the one who actually could able to collect this hydrogen and oxygen gas using this electrolysis. He just almost the similar time they had done this experiment, but in his experiment he just changed the way the electrodes are arranged. Actually he kept two tubes in an inverted tubes which is dipped in the electrolyte, so that when the gas is collected from these two electrodes will actually displace the water from this, you can collect the gas in that tube, and then he could able to collect this oxygen hydrogen gas. And he also done a lot of studies on electroplating, and this is actually the first time that electroplating has been done. And he also found another type of Reiter pile. It is called as Reiter pile. It actually involves disc of coppers dipped in sodium chloride solution. Actually, how he died is actually he was using this particular pile, Reiter pile, to check the muscle stimulation in his own body. He was connecting that one to his nose, tongues, all legs, hands, everything, and he was doing these experiments continuously. Because of this and the overusage of drugs, he passed away at the age of 33. He was very young, and he done a lot of work by that time. Almost started at around 14, maybe your age, and like at the age of 33, actually he passed away. He's one of the good scientists, but he was like passed away in a very early age. Okay, Humphrey Davy. You know anything about Humphrey Davy? Oh yes. Huh? Huh? Okay, then what else? You might have studied in your first year. You are all in +2, right? Second year of. Huh? Yeah, +1 you might have studied. Yeah. Anyone? Huh? Huh? Sorry? Yeah, +1 they might have studied. Chlorine gas, related to chlorine gas. He's the one he is the one who told that the gas evolved is actually chlorine. It's an element, not a compound. Earlier it was like oxygen plus, it's like a molecule they consider. So he is the one who done for the chlorine. So you should know the other person. Okay, so Humphrey Davy is a very good scientist again. Actually, he was the one who could able to tell that the conduction of current in an voltaic pile is not due to the contact between the metals. It is because of the reaction happening in the voltaic pile, and he was the one. It is the reaction between the copper and the zinc which results in the conduction of the current, and he is the one who started actually give some concept to the electrochemistry. Understand? So next, Humphrey Davy, actually he lost his sight in between some experiment with nitrogen trichloride, and he then took Michael Faraday as his assistant, and from this Michael Faraday started doing some experiments, and he then done this Faraday law of electrolysis. Actually Faraday had contributed a lot. He actually could coin the word called ions first, and also the reactions are happening at the electrode electrolyte interface, and he could also quantify the amount of current generated, and he could correlate with the amount of material deposited or dissolved from the metal. So this is what Faraday's law. So why Faraday's law is so important? What is Faraday's constant? Huh? What is actually Faraday's constant? Yeah, that's true. So it is 9650. This is the charge of the electron into Avogadro number actually. So with this small introduction, because of the time limitation, I am going into different energy storage systems. Okay. In between the discussion of this, I will give some fundamentals of electrochemistry. So just we have different energy storage system. We can actually broadly classify it into batteries, fuel cell, as well as capacitors. Okay. So batteries. There are two types of batteries, actually primary and secondary batteries. What is primary battery? Yeah, it cannot be recharged. Whatever the electrochemical reaction happening in a primary batteries cannot be reversed back. It is a non-reversible reactions. So you cannot reverse back that reaction. So it is called as a primary battery. So after use, you have to throw it. Okay. What is a secondary battery? Recharge rate. So the reverse, basically it can be recharge means the electrochemical reaction happening in that battery is a reversible reaction. You can reverse to some extent. So they are called as secondary batteries. So there are many examples. So what is a common example for primary batteries? AA AAA is not a battery, it is a dimension of a battery. What is an huh? Yeah, dry cell is a primary battery. Then mercury, zinc mercury. You mean? Yeah, yeah, it's a primary battery. Then what else? Secondary battery. Huh? Other than lithium ion. Lead? Huh? Lead acid battery. Yeah. Then what else? Nickel metal hydride batteries. Yeah. Yeah, redox flow batteries. Some metal air batteries are also there. Some sort of metal air batteries are also metal iodine batteries, all sort of things are meant to be like reversible. Even alkaline, whatever the alkaline batteries, that is zinc MnO2 batteries, that can also, people are trying to reverse back the chemistry. There are a lot of research is going on this one. So these are some of the terms we use to characterize, say, batteries. So one is the voltage, the total voltage of a battery. It is actually the E cathode minus E anode. The standard potential is basically, you may be knowing, with respect to an hydrogen electrode. So hydrogen electrode is considered as 0 volt. With respect to that one, you have an electrochemical series, and with that one, it is the standard electrochemical reaction. So it is the standard electrode potential, or the cell potential is equal to the cathode minus E anode. Okay. So next is a capacity. Capacity is the amount of charge storage in a battery. So how we will calculate this charge storage in a battery?
Ma'am,
You are looking at there and again.
no. Ma'am, my question is molecular weight, is that the anode or the cathode, ma'am?
Yeah. If it is, you want the capacity of your anode, then it is the molecular weight of your anode material.
So both the cathode and anode will have different capacities.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Okay, so I'll tell you that. I'll make you to do that. So basically, it is like NF divided by molecular weight. Anyway, Faraday is in, what is the unit of Faraday? Again. Okay, then it has to be converted into, if you want in milliampere hour per gram. Molecular weight is again in gram. So F has to be converted into coulomb per mole. Coulomb is what? Coulomb is what? Ampere second. So second has to be converted into hour. Ampere into milliampere. So you have this 10 by 36 over here to convert into milliampere hour per gram. Okay. So what he was asking is, I have a cell, so I have an anode and an cathode. Okay. Okay, so I have a milliampere hour per gram here, milliampere hour per gram. So how I will get the cell capacity? Any idea? You might have studied some physics capacitors in series and parallel, right? Yes, I know. I also done plus one. Yeah. Oh, 12th you are having. So, I'll make it a little thicker. Okay, so here I have a capacitor here, another capacitor here, right? Right? So because of the negative charge on the anode, I have a positive charge from the ions in the solution. Okay. Similarly, you have a negative charge over here and you have the positive charge. So it's like a capacitors in series. So 1 by Q cell is equal to 1 by QA, 1 by QC. Okay. So you can do this like this. So how important it is, you know? There is some term called mass balance. Okay. So if you have, let your anode capacitance is around 50 and your cathode capacitance is 100. Okay, milliampere hour per gram. Milliampere hour per gram. Okay. So you have a anode and cathode which having a different capacities. So how we are going to assemble a cell? So basically you have two. Yeah.
Can you use 2 anodes and 1 cathode?
No. See, if you will complicate the circuit in a battery, it's not a single cell actually, it is a stack of cells. So if you increase a single contact point extra, you are actually increasing the complexity. So if you are increasing the complexity, you are going to lose lot of power, energy, everything. So you should make the circuit as simple as possible. So how we are going to do this? Half the? Yeah, that's true.
We can immerse half the cathode in the solution.
So, but if you will, why you want to make it half the cathode? What? Yeah, that's true. So, this is the maximum you can get from the cell, 50 milliampere hour per gram. So, here what does it mean? 1 gram of this material will give you 50 milliampere hour, right? So, you have to take to get 50 milliampere hour per gram. Otherwise, if you will contact these two, if you will take 50 and 100 and connect the cell, what happens is that you have an excess amount of unused mass on the cathode. So that will actually increase your entire cell weight. The cell weight increase means your cell capacity, entire cell capacity will be decreased, cell energy density will be decreased. So it is called as mass balance. So most of the capacitors, whenever you are making a lithium-ion batteries, this is one of the crucial point. So they will calculate the half cell capacity, anode separately and cathode separately, and then make the cell according to the weight. So this is one of the crucial point somebody has to check before assembling a battery. So capacity is very important while assembling a cell. So next is specific energy density. That is basically, you know, it's in the capacity unit mass into voltage.
Capital F here, what does it represent here?
F. Faraday constant, yeah.
But if for capacitance also we use capital F, so how do we differentiate between both?
It's Faraday constant over here.
What should be a appropriate capacity for a battery?
Depends upon the use.
Means, for what value it should not be more than what value, or are there any conditions on the
See,
capacity for battery?
for example, if you want long range, you want to have the battery for a longer time operation, you need a higher capacity battery. But you can compromise on the performance, like you need only an upgrade power. then you can have a smaller capacity batteries. Either you need a higher voltage, right? You understand, right? Or in other words, higher energy density batteries you require for a longer range. So for example, an electric vehicle you want to run. So you need a long run, that 1000 kilometer you want to run. So you need a higher energy density battery. But you want to have an higher, you have to climb an hill, like you have to brake. There you need a higher power. So you need that time the cell has to have an higher current to be applied and the voltage should be high. So you need a higher power battery. So another thing is that rating, actually C rating, it is usually commonly used in C rating batteries. They will be telling this much C rating, C by 5, C by 2. This is actually the amount of current you given, at what rate you are withdrawing the current. Basically it is that much only. It is little more complicated, means if you know the capacity, then 1 C is actually the, I told, right? So it is 50 milliampere hour per gram. If I will withdraw a 50 milliampere of current, for 1 hour, for 1 gram of material, it is called as 1 C rate of that material. Okay. So by 2 means it will run for 2 hours. You can apply a 25 milliampere. So that is what actually the amount of load you are putting in, C rating, the current withdrawn or current applied. So basically this is the discharge curve, how it looks. This is voltage versus discharge capacity. It looks like this. See, you can see at higher C rating, that is 2C, your capacity, because you are applying a very high load, you are putting lot of application in your mobile, your mobile will get drained soon. So you are putting lot of work for the battery to done, that is called as 2C rating. And if it is 0.2C, it is shows a higher capacity because you are doing a less amount of work. Okay. Okay, so I need somebody from your side. I'll tell. This guy seems to be good. Come. You come. You. I think you are sleepy. Can you please read all the things in this battery? All the things. You can have the bell. Everything.
LR03. Sorry.
No. You start from something. It's written Panasonic. You have to read all those things. Yeah.
Panasonic Alkaline AAA LR03 1.5 volts, no mercury added. Caution, may explode or leak if recharged. Inserted improperly, mixed with different battery types or disposed of in fire. Do not open battery. Keep batteries out of reach of children. Do not swallow. Panasonic Corporation, made in Thailand.
Yeah, it's all important actually. See, lot of things will happen with this small thing. You guys have to be careful. You have to read all the things. If you are handling any chemicals in your life, you have to be very careful. See, even the carbon can kill you. Okay, so you guys have to be very careful when you are doing, if you are doing a research in your life again or something, anything you are doing, you should read the entire thing. Anybody read everything? Anybody read everything in this battery? For example, he told LR03. Did you?
Ma'am, it's LiO3.
No. He read LRCO3. You might have heard it. He read LR03. It is LR03. LR. Okay. Thank you. So,
Ma'am, what is LRO3?
I'll tell you. For that only I asked you to read the entire thing actually. So, actually from the covering of a battery, you can understand what is the chemistry of a battery. So when you're throwing a battery, you don't know what is the chemistry. So how we are going to understand how to dispose it properly, right? You should know how to dispose the battery. Yeah, sorry. Okay. So you know how to dispose it, right? So for that you should know what is the chemistry inside. So there is a standard, There are different standards, but this is actually followed in most of the cases. This is done by International Electrochemical Commission, IEC nomenclature. Okay, so for example, if you have a zinc ammonium chloride, for example, your negative electrode, your anode is zinc and your positive electrode is oxygen. It's basically called as zinc A batteries. You and the electrolyte is ammonium chloride, zinc chloride. You have a zinc A battery, and in its code is called as A. Okay, and if it is B and C, it is basically called lithium batteries, lithium primary batteries. That is carbon monofluoride and manganese dioxide. This is primary lithium batteries. Okay, B and C. Okay, and again this come L. He told this one as L, right? L is the one he told, and it is the zinc alkaline metal hydroxide. Alkali metal hydroxide, that is mostly sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide, and manganese dioxide. So these alkaline batteries are having the code L. Okay, then these are the other things like P, S and Z. Okay, these are the different nomenclature or code of some of the primary batteries used. And this R comes. This is the number code for different. You know that AAA batteries, it is having a code of R03, and AA batteries R6, and R14 for C, R20 for D, and F for R25. What is the actual difference between A and AAA? Size. So what happens if the size is increase or decrease? Yeah, more capacity. So you have longer application, longer drive. You can, if you want to have a long time applications, you can use this AA over AAA. So what AAA is actually used? Yeah, AAA is then yeah, AC, TV remotes, any remotes where the applications is a very small amount of current. Okay, so these are the, so how is the nomenclature I will tell? The first letter. If you have something like 2 in front of LR03, it means that there are 2 cells which is in series. Okay, inside the covering, you may be seeing as a single cover, but inside that you can have 2 batteries which is connected in series. And the second is the system. Actually, this second letter or the second alphabet is actually for the system, like A, B, C, D, F, this one. What is the chemistry inside? And this, the third one is the shape. You can have different letters like R for round, cylindrical or button cell, and P for not round, and F for flat, and S for square. So mostly it will be R, cylindrical cells. In primary cells you will always see cylindrical cells actually, or button cells. So these are, you guys knows these things. Anyway, I think AAA, how it looks. A23, A27, these are the different sizes of batteries you can see. So this is one example you can see. It is ZR6Y. So can you please tell what is it? What will be the chemistry? ZR6. ZR6. So tell me from here. ZR6. No. First you should tell from the first, right? What is Z? This is zinc. This one, nickel oxyhydroxide. This particular chemistry is the Z. Then R is for the cylindrical cell, and R6 is actually AA batteries. Then you see this one, Duracell. It is called as 9-volt battery. If you will see its IEC code, this one, 6LR61. Please write down 6LR61 and tell me what it is. 6LR61. I'll ask somebody. You. What is 6LR61? Can you please explain? You. The next. Ladies. You. 6LR61. Please explain. No, 6 1. We will see that one. Let her start. Okay.
L zinc,
Huh?
zinc manganese dioxide, and R61
6 is what? Initial 6 is what?
AA.
No. What is the initial 6? What is 6? See here. So N1 is actually 6, right? Yours. What does it mean? It means that 6 batteries are connected in series. Okay. Inside this Duracell battery, you have 6 cells are connected in series. That is what 6 stands for. Initial 6. L is for the alkaline, manganese alkaline batteries. R is for the shape. Even though it looks like an rectangular shape, inside whatever the batteries are cylindrical batteries or coin cell batteries. Okay, and 6-1 is diameter. So next is diameter. Either it can be size code or its diameter. Whatever the R batteries inside is having a diameter of 6 mm. Okay, and this is the next one. D. Its height is around 1 mm. So that is what means by 6LR61. It can be either size code or the diameter. These are the usual sizes of the batteries. So they have a code. Other ones having the diameter. Understand? Huh? See, I don't know. See, this is 6, right? Initial 6. Oops. 6LR61, right? So this 6 is for the, actually inside this one there are 6 cells. It should be connected in series, okay? And so inside this small cells, it is an L is for the alkaline batteries, R is a cylindrical cell, 6 is the diameter, 1 is the height. And first one is the 6 number of cells in series.
What if they're connected in parallel?
You can see here, right? If they are connected in series, you can see. See, this X corresponds to the if it is in parallel. Okay. It can be there. If you have all these modifier, all those things, you can have the slash. Okay, now next is this one. It's a coin cell, CR203. 2032. C is for lithium. R is for, it is an coin cell. 20 is for the diameter and 32 is for the height. Fine. Okay, next we will go to something like lithium and batteries nomenclature. So these things also you might have seen in the batteries actually. So it also having a nomenclature. You can write it down if you want. Again, first N is for the cells in series. A1 is actually the identification of the negative electrode. It can, if it is lithium, it's I. It is represented. In the secondary batteries, lithiums are represented as I. Okay. Then A2 is actually the cathode chemistry. It can be a cobalt based battery, nickel based battery, iron based batteries. You can have N, V, T, all those things. My God, he will sleep now. A3 is actually the it can be either cylindrical or prism. Okay, and N2 is the diameter or thickness, and N3 is the maximum prism shape cell. It's actually not required for the prism. It is the width of the battery. You need that Prism is actually the pouch cell type of batteries actually. And N4 is the maximum height. N5 is actually, it is connected in series. Okay, tell me then, this one. 1ICP 5 bar 44 bar 63. You can tell. See this one. This one is IEC 62133 is actually it's safety parameter tested actually. The other one ICP 5 bar 44 bar 63. What is it actually?
Okay, one is for the number of cells, so it's one cell
In series.
in series. Then I is for lithium-ion battery, a negative electrode. C is for cobalt.
Oh yeah, it is basically used lithium cobalt oxide.
Yeah, lithium cobalt. P is for prism.
Yeah.
Then have 5, which is the maximum diameter or thickness
Yeah.
in millimeters. And then 44 is the height of the prism shaped cell. Then 63 is the maximum height.
Yeah, it's a prism, so you have a width, right?
Yeah.
Width of the prism. Width actually. Yeah, that's it. So if you have an extra N5 is the then number of connected in parallel actually. So this is how you will read an secondary lithium-ion battery. From this you can know what is the chemistry inside. Most of them they won't tell you what is the chemistry, like lithium cobalt oxide, lithium iron phosphate, all those things. So you can understand from this IEC code. So with this, I'll give you some examples of primary and secondary batteries. First, we'll go for alkaline zinc manganese batteries. Why? Because it is one of the initially it was dry cell. Initially, mostly people use dry cell for most of the application. Primary batteries, the maximum sold out batteries were dry cells. Now it is alkaline batteries. It is called as basically alkaline batteries. All over your primary application, you can see this type of batteries, alkaline batteries. It is getting lot of attention, and it is one of the batteries which is actually, if you will see, any person will use 7 to 8 units of batteries in an year. That is the production rate of this battery. So can you tell me who are some companies who is producing this type of batteries? No.
USL.
Panasonic.
Every day
Nippon.
is actually energized. Yeah, Nippon. So actually in an alkaline zinc batteries, I think in your textbook it is dry cell is mentioned. So if you will see the dry cell chemistry and this alkaline chemistry, it is almost similar. In a dry cell you actually use then zinc chloride, ammonium chloride as an electrolyte. Here you are using an alkaline medium. So basically at the anode, zinc get discharged as zincate, and manganese oxide get reduced as manganese oxyhydroxide. What is the oxidation state of manganese oxide? What is the oxidation state of manganese in manganese oxide? Then manganese oxyhydroxide? Yeah, so it get reduced, 4 plus to 3 plus. So it is get reduced at the cathode. So basically the cell will give an OCV of 1.5 volt. Okay. So in this battery, actually people use in zinc particles actually, not the zinc metal, it's zinc particle actually. It is stored like a tear shape, your drop shaped zinc particle to increase the surface area of the zinc. And as well as they use then manganese oxide. This manganese oxide is actually called as electrolytic manganese oxide, manganese dioxide. It will be called as EMD. If you go to any industry, they will be telling this particular manganese oxide as EMD. That is electrolytic manganese oxide. It is produced by the deposition of this manganese oxide from zinc sulfate, because this will have a higher surface area, and this particular manganese oxide is having a crystal phase of gamma. So that it have a good porosity, its potential is better than other crystal variant. And so this particular gamma manganese oxide is used, and it is prepared by the electrolytic deposition of manganese from manganese sulfate. and they will be taken out and then further treated and used as an electrode. So let me go give a brief history. So this Valdemar Jagner, he's a Swedish scientist, I think. He only first gives some idea on the alkaline batteries actually. Later, who is this person? Okay, fine. I thought you guys may not be. So he also, okay. So this person actually he first developed the alkaline batteries. His batteries is used in the Second World War. 1942 World War, his batteries, he actually used that nickel cadmium batteries, alkaline batteries, as well as nickel iron batteries. Edison also have a company, Edison Battery, there's a company by Edison's Battery, maybe no, then it was taken up by the Exide in 1972 and they commercialized this type of battery. This is the Edison's nickel iron batteries. Getting inspired from this one, this person, Louis Urey, is very famous. He was working in Union Carbide, that is every day. Union Carbide every day, battery division. He was working there. He was given a project to improve the dry cell efficiency, energy density of the dry cell. He was trying it out, but he was not able to improve it. So he thought, why not to change into some other chemistry? So from that, Urey actually started working, getting inspired from the alkaline batteries of Edison. He started using the alkaline battery. So this is Urey is the first one who produced the first and commercialized through Union Carbide every day, and it is called as Energizer. These batteries are called Energizer. This is the first prototype he made. It is in this Smithsonian institution. It is like a research lab, and then you can, in US, you can have all sort of, even there you can see the Edison's bulb. So this prototype is the first one he done. So what was his contribution is that when you have a zinc metal, it is in an alkaline KOH. It have a lot of density, right? It will come down. So what he used is he made a paste of this zinc metal powder in this was almost the formulation he used. So he used then atomized zinc powder. It do have a, like, this is an SEM image, scanning electron microscopic image of the SEM. This is like a teardrop or like a drop like shape zinc, which is mixed with potassium hydroxide. It is a high concentrated potassium hydroxide and carboxymethyl cellulose and a cross-linking polymers. Actually, the cross-linking is for when it discharges, right? This zinc will get disconnected. These are particles, right? When you will discharge, some zinc will go, so you have a lot of space. So this cross-linking will actually hold it. If there is no cross-linking, you can have a lot of space. So then there won't be any electron connectivity. These zinc particles should be connected to each other, right, for the proper flow of electrons. So they use an cross-linking polymers so that it will close together after discharge also. So the energy density or the capacity of the batteries will be sustained for a longer time. This was Urey's contribution. And so the positive electrode, this is about the zinc electrode, and about the positive electrode was what I told. It is an EMD. It is an electrolytic deposited manganese dioxide that is used as an positive electrode or cathode in this battery. And electrolyte used is also a highly concentrated electrolyte that is around 10 to 11 molar KOH with a gelling agent. So everything is a dry sort of battery to avoid the leakage. If you have used the such KOH, what happens is that it will start leaking. And they also use the zinc oxide in this battery, along with so that any hydrogen evolution because of during the reaction can be suppressed. It is it will actually degrade the battery. So for that, this is the formulation they use a gelling agent as well as saturated zinc oxide. KOH was the electrolyte used. And separator was composed of fibers of rayon. It's a separator in between. So these are the two industrial, how it looks. It's a cross section.
Ma'am, could you repeat the cross-link polymer structure and its importance in the longevity of the cell?
Actually, the cross-link polymer, usually they won't give the details of that polymer. So this is a polymer. Actually, what they will do is like that will hold the zinc particle. So if it was not if it is not there, that zinc after some discharge, right, it will have some gaps in between. So the contact point won't be there. So these cross-linked polymers can hold the zinc together. So it is an image without the cross-linked polymer after discharge. You can see this was the initial. It has contact point everywhere. But when you don't have the cross-linked polymer, you can see that they are disconnected. So you will have an capacity loss. So in order to avoid that, they use then cross-linked polymers so that these zinc particles will be holded by these cross-linked polymers. It's like a fiber-like network, right? So it can hold the zinc properly. So that was the use of a cross-linked polymer here. So this is how the cross-sectional view of this battery. So so dry cell, you may not be knowing it, right? How it looks. Okay, it will be there in your textbooks, I think. Huh? 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 I didn't hear you. Okay, so you will be knowing it. So it is actually reverse of this one, dry cell. So you can see that zinc particle is actually inside. In a dry cell, it is actually outside. So it is the zinc particle with the gelling agent, everything is inside, and the contact is here through a stainless steel pin, and the carbon with MnO2, which will be outside. So this is how the structure, and it is in a coin cell. You have a negative and positive and a separator inside. So next is a lead acid battery.
Ma'am, in the previous slide, what's the purpose of the lawn?
Not able to get,
In the previous slide, what's the purpose of the long rod going to the center of the cell?
Actually,
In the
you need to
cylindrical
take a
design.
contact from the zinc metal, right? See, if you will give a contact here, right, down only, you can have a contact of the zinc metal there, right? So you should have a proper contact. You need a stainless steel going inside. And you have an, actually, if you will see here, there's a gasket here. So that will separate the contact between the anode and the cathode. There's a spring and then this one, a plastic gasket over there. So that will cut the contact between the anode and the cathode. So lead acid battery is a secondary battery. You guys may be knowing a lot about the lead acid battery. Actually, in a lead acid battery, lead is the anode and lead oxide is the cathode. Okay, at the lead, actually, oxidation will happen and it forms the lead sulfate. And at the cathode, lead oxide will reduce to lead sulfate again. And during the reverse, it will come back as lead oxide and lead. So, in a lead acid battery, usually people use a spongy lead. What does it mean by spongy lead?
Lot of
How
holes
it is
for air.
generated? Why not lead? Why not use a lead? Huh? Okay, so what will increase? What will improve it? Yeah. Yeah, the one thing is it improves the reaction. Another problem with a lead acid battery is the sulfation of the battery that I will discuss later. And lead oxide. Actually, the spongy lead is actually created. Actually, all these lead acid batteries, electrodes are pre-formed before putting into a battery. Actually, they forms the lead sulfate inside an electrolyte and forms the electrode and then use that electrode for the batteries. There's a formation step always for the lead electrodes. Maybe this may be not that you guys don't feel it very great, but as a researcher, as a scientist, we feel it is very good. Because when you will start doing it, you feel the difficulties. It's not the reactions actually. You have a lot of other reactions happening in a batteries. You cannot control that one. So because of that, your capacity, energy density, everything will be lost. So it is not only the battery, it is the designing of the cell is also very important. So if you will see lithium ion batteries, you can see different designs. If you see in any electric vehicles, they will be telling some different technologies actually that improves actually the capacity, the energy density, the way they will put the series parallel connection, how the coolants are gone inside the cell. All these designs actually improves the performance of the battery. So maybe these things you won't like it, but in some point of time will help you, I think. So lead acid battery is one of the huge market again. Till now, there is nothing to compete with lead acid battery. It's very old science, but still lead acid battery is very robust and used in everywhere. So where are the places it is used? Huh? For what? Why car batteries that lead acid battery is used? What is the name of that battery in car? There's a specific name for that battery. That car batteries, why that is used? Why there is a battery is required in a car?
For running the starter.
Okay, fine. So what is the name of that battery? There's a specific name of that battery. It is called as start light ignition. SLI batteries. Huh?
Can you repeat the name?
They are called as SLI batteries. That is a different design as compared to other UPS batteries. It do have a different design. So they are called as SLI batteries, and these testing protocols are very different because you need very high current flow for a very small time. So the design of the cell or the coating of the cell is improved in such a way that it can hold that high current. And it's charged in a floating type, that whenever the car is running, the diodes will charge the battery. This is how it is done. So its design only changed the way it is used. Chemistry is the same, but when it is used in UPS, it is having a different design. Storage battery, it will be used in a different way. So this is some history of the lead acid batteries. You can have this William Joseph Stinson. He's the one who started an lead acid based chemistry. Actually, what he done is 2 lead plates which is immersed in sulfuric acid, and he started charging the battery. What he observed is that using a Daniel cell, he started putting some current to the electrodes. What he observed is that there is a secondary current generated, and from that he proposed the idea that it can be a rechargeable battery. This was actually the person I told right before. He used a writer. He is the one who started a secondary. He can be considered as the person who started the secondary battery. Actually, his writer pile is having a capacity to recharge back. It has some sort of reverse current as compared to the voltaic pile. So inspired from him, actually, Joseph has started this particular lead acid battery by putting the lead plates in a sulfuric acid. And then Planté is actually considered as the father of lead acid battery. Actually, this is the Planté, how he constructed the lead acid battery. You can see that both are lead coils actually. Yeah, I'll finish. So these are lead coils which is dispersed in an sulfuric acid and started charging, discharging. He can see lot of bubbles coming in, and then there was a lead oxide forming on the surface which result in a secondary charge. So what he observed is that once the bubbles will start coming, actually after that there won't be any reactions proceed. So charging should be stopped when the bubbles will be started. So this was Planté's lead acid battery. After that, Furey, he was the one who used the lead oxide and constructed a lead acid battery. And with this Furey lead acid battery, actually Thomas Parker first introduced an electric car in 1895. This is the electric car used by lead acid battery. Okay. So
Ma'am.
this is how the commercial lead acid batteries will looks like.
Can we not use other electrolytes for all these batteries?
The chemistry is like that. You have a different chemistry, different potential if you will use different electrolyte, right? So-
Most efficiencies in
It will give a voltage of 2. It is a highly concentrated sulfuric acid, so you will get a 2 volt from the battery. If you will use some other chemistry, maybe it may
Lesser
not be
voltage.
reversible. You don't know how the chemistry will be. So it is a reversible chemistry, and with this you are getting this voltage.
Okay.
So this is how a commercial lead acid battery grids will look. So there are two types. For the positive electrode, actually you can have a two type of design. Actually this is like an tubular design. Tubular batteries they will be called. So the lead oxide I told, right, it don't have a proper interaction with this is a lead strip. Actually it don't have a proper contact. Actually during the process it can shut down. So for that purpose they use the tubular design. But this tubular design is having a less surface area, so it cannot be used for an high drain current applications like SLI batteries or something. But whenever there is a lot of like shakes everything, it is better to use the tubular design. So depends upon the design and the use, it will be used in different places. So this is a flat plate lead acid battery design. This is how the lead plate will looks after formation. This is how the lead oxide will forms. This is the Bayer grade. So one of the biggest disadvantage or biggest problems you have to face in a lead acid batteries, one is sulfation. Actually during discharging of the batteries, lead sulfate will be forming, right? Once these very big crystals, if that lead sulfate is forming as a crystal, it is very difficult to charge them back. So lot of sulfates are coming, your capacity is actually fading. Because of that, actually what happen is that you have other side reaction like hydrogen evolution, everything will be happening. Because of hydrogen evolution, you will result in an the electrode will get bulged. You will have an disintegration of the electrode, everything will be happening. So one of the difficult process in a lead acid, one of the biggest problem people will face is the sulfation of the lead plates actually. Another one is the gas evolution.
Ma'am, so UPS also uses lead acid batteries.
Yeah.
So why are we putting distilled water in the UPS like once every few months?
Why?
Asking. Ma'am.
Yeah.
Right.
Why?
You have to put distilled water in the.
Actually, in a lead acid battery, while you are charging, you will have lot of water loss because lot of hydrogen and oxygen evolution also will happen. So because of that, you will have a lot of water loss. So this water, to make up that water, you have to put the water. So sulfuric acid will be there in the solution. Sulfate ions will be there. You have to put the distilled water to maintain that concentration of the sulfuric acid. So you have some sort of bar, right, where you have to fill. Yeah.
You said that hydrogen and oxygen will be evolved.
Mm.
So where does that hydrogen and oxygen go?
It will goes out.
No, but all of those are closed.
Who told it is closed? Okay. So this is a lead acid battery. There are different design of lead acid batteries. So this is a flooded lead acid battery. Whatever he was telling, you have to put the water, right? That is called as a flooded lead acid battery design. So you can have two walls. You can see the walls for the gas to evolve. Yeah, it won't be gas proof. If it is gas proof, it will explode.
So there are like measures, and are there like some kind of way inside the battery to stop sulfuric acid from
Sulfuric acid getting out. Sulfate ions. Yeah, it will
sulfuric
be
acid? The acid, like if the battery is like dropped.
Yeah, definitely. It will goes out, right?
Oh,
If you will break the cell, the electrolyte, it is a flooded cell, right? It will goes out.
See, sulfuric acid does not react, it's a medium. It's a electrolyte on both sides of lead as well as dioxide. Whatever sulfate is being consumed is being used. So, yeah, so I mean, my understanding is that it is not, it's an electrolyte, but it's extremely important that you have a concentrated sulfuric acid because the pH has to be such that the potential, electric potential, electromotive force, what we call as the E, is specific to specific types of electrolytes, and you want to maximize the efficiency. And hydrogen ion has the highest ionic mobility among all the ions. Therefore, you have the acid which is very favorable, but acid which corrodes. Therefore, it's a compromise between both of them. I mean, he knows this much better than I do. Yeah.
So then this is a flooded lead acid battery. So you have to put the electrolyte inside. This is another one. It is called as valve regulated lead acid battery. It is a closed one. You don't have to fill the, there is a maintenance free batteries actually. These are called as maintenance free batteries. You can see in the now new cars, everything, you can see this VRLA batteries actually. So these batteries actually use an AGM separator. It is called as absorbent glass mat, AGM, which will soak in the electrolyte, or a gel-based electrolyte. That silica and sulfuric acid will be mixed together and forms a gel, and which will be used as an electrolyte inside. So that it will reduce the amount of loss of water, or free water won't be there. So you will have less amount of hydrogen evolution. So these type of batteries are used, and it do have an like 5 years warranty, 7 years of warranty. Then you have to take it back, and all the lead has to be regenerated. So another battery is the.
You might want to close. I think they have.
Okay.
You might want to close it up.
Yeah, this is another one, SLI batteries, which I was telling. So let's choose lithium-ion batteries. Maybe I can take it next time.
It's a long lecture. The students are not prepared for it.
Yeah.
So you might.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to close it. You can take two.
Yeah. So next is actually lithium-ion. You guys know this lithium-ion. Lithium-ion battery is actually an intercalation chemistry. It's not the redox chemistry. It is an intercalation chemistry. Actually, you have an transition metal oxides. And then lithiated graphite is basically used as an layered material. And because of the intercalation chemistry, the lithium from the graphite will goes to the cathode during the discharge, and during the charge actually it will goes back to the graphite electrode. So this is how it works. There are different types of anodes are looked at. One is lithiated graphite. Another very interesting material is a silicon based material, which is having a very huge capacity. And lithium as such as an anode itself. Why lithium is not used as an anode? No, basically the problem is in lithium, when recharged back, it have a lot of dendrite formation. Dendrite formation actually on the metal. After charging back, the lithium will grows like this. It won't grows like a flat. So it will grows like this. So because of this, short circuit will happen. Because of short circuit, you will have an explosion. That is what you will see, right? When you are charging long time, your battery will get bulged out. That is because of the reaction of the electrolyte inside. There will be a lot of gas evolution as well as dendrite formation. If you are overcharging, actually you will ended up in a lithiation on the surface of the anode and the cathode. So it is not advised to have an overcharging of lithium-ion batteries because it is very explosive. So whatever the electrolytes used is like an carbonate-based electrolytes and very flammable material. So it will get flame and it will ended up in the explosion of the batteries. So these are the, if you will see, these are the people who contributed a lot. If you know, Whittingham, Goodenough, and Yoshino got the Nobel Prize in 2019 for their contribution for lithium-ion batteries. So Goodenough actually celebrated his 100th birthday last year. He's one of the renowned electrochemists actually. So it started with Stanley Whittingham. He actually started with a TiS2. It is a very very not stable material. Okay, I'll stop. So then lithium cobalt actually was coined by this Goodenough. For this he got the Nobel Prize. And graphite actually, Yasami, that's a engineer, he actually given the graphite is used as an anode because up to that time lithium was used as an anode and it was not stable. So in order to get rid, he actually formulated this lithiated graphite as an anode. So then Yoshino actually fabricated the lithium-ion battery using lithium cobalt oxide and a soft carbon. Then they had improved the chemistry with graphite, and Sony actually began producing this commercialization of these batteries. So mostly this is the what are the different disadvantages of using the battery is actually the cost of lithium-ion battery. Now the research is going to get if the cost of the battery is less than $100, then only it is economically feasible actually. So people are trying to get a battery which is less cost. So cobalt is one of the costly thing in lithium batteries. Lithium cobalt dioxide is used as a cathode, which cobalt is the major costly metal in that one. And then now people are trying, they reached up to $137, even less than this also. Close to 100 also people achieved. So if it is less than $100, you can have a very less costly lithium ion batteries. Another is the safety concern. And the reversibility of this batteries. We have to take it back all the metals from that. So recycling of the lithium ion batteries are also in a research. In this direction, actually, people are trying some solid state batteries, where instead of a liquid electrolyte, a solid state electrolytes will be used. And what I told earlier, right, lithium metal, if we can use the lithium metal, it will give a higher capacity, because it have lot of, in a lithiated graphite, you can have only for 6 carbon 1 Li is available. If it is a lithium metal, as such, your capacity will be very high. So the battery size also will be reduced. So people said, but when you're using a lithium metal as such, the dendrite formation is a major disadvantage. By using a solid state batteries, you can overcome all these problems, and you can get a better, efficient and efficient lithium ion batteries. And now a lot of research are going on to develop a good solid state batteries. So which using a solid state battery, actually you can improve the safety, because the flammable ingredients will be lower. And the pressure also, it can also withstand high pressure. So these batteries will be very safer, and you can also recycle it in a better way, as well as its cost also can be reduced. So these are the different direction of lithium ion batteries now for research. So with this, I am thanking.